are getting spun up for this Thursday, TMI Thursday. Ask Mama Lynn anything. We have our one and only precious little timbre to keep us company. And oh, somebody's got a little bit of the sneezes. Yep. So, I guess from the perspective of TMI Thursday or whatever, it's not really really angling for something that would be TMI. It's more like introducing the idea of like today is kind of day where if you want to talk about something that would typically be, the kind of thing that, well, we don't talk about that. We we don't um we don't invite conversations about that right now. Uh, from like a social construct kind of perspective. That is today. So, um, yeah. So anyway, I hope that as people potentially come to the channel and see that we've gone live, um, that we'll have a little bit of engagement today. Otherwise, I guess we'll be revealing a fair amount of stuff about Mama Lynn and perhaps Amber as well. Um, I do also want to thank everybody who has taken the time to sub, to visit, to check things out. Um, just kind of like I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think that probably every stream day I should probably do an introduction until we really had taken the time to produce an introduction type video. So that way, if a person decides to stop by and wants to see what's been going on, or if you watch the playback on a different day, you can indeed know what the crap I'm doing. So, and hopefully one of these days I will do an introduction that is actually worth keeping and will serve really well as my introduction video. So, anyway, Mama Lynn is a tradition that started back when I was in college, which was, I guess we were talking about approximately, oh, maybe 17 years ago now. And what we used to do is, I lived in the dorms all through college, and I had a bit of a reputation as being the puzzle lady. So, what I would do is I would set up a jigsaw puzzle in the lobby of my dorm floor, and that's where I'd spend most of my free time. I'd put on music, I'd go sit, do the puzzle, and I slowly but surely became known throughout the dorm as being the puzzle lady. After a little while, people also spread the reputation or, the habit, whatever you want to call it, that if you needed help writing a paper, if you needed advice on your relationships, if you needed to ask questions or just talk to somebody that didn't bring judgment to the table, you could go talk to the puzzle lady. And so I ended up having a fair number of interesting conversations over the course of the couple of years in which we were doing this. And ultimately, one of my good friends dubbed me Mama Lynn. Um, that ultimately because the vibe that you got was like I was a non judgmental uh, mom kind of figure. So I can be super protective of people. I have a tendency of being really blunt and real with people. I like to be, I honor honesty and just, I don't know. I think when we're trying to share information and talk about real life scenarios, while nuance can be fun, it doesn't really get us to a constructive place when we're really trying to figure things out. So, anyway, my goal with this channel and what we're doing here is to kind of recreate that space. So, it's a little bit different. I mean, it's definitely different from what a lot of people are doing here on YouTube. Um, I'm literally logging in most nights during the week, during the evening, after most people have concluded their days, here in the United States at least, and kind of leaving the stream up for as long as I can kind of tolerate. So some streams are longer than others, but ultimately the idea is that there's an open forum, any topic kind of goes thing going on. Now, over the course of time, I expect that we're going to be seeing me go through, subreddits or uh, email questions or whatever. But at the end of the day, my primary focus and goal is to have it be a space where people know they could log in when I'm live and ask their questions. So, anyway, right now we're running kind of a bare bones operation. I just have a pretty uh, standard camera. I don't have a special microphone. I don't have special lighting really. Um, I, so I'm not sitting here like trying to be like really, fireworks and excitement and all of that stuff. I'm trying to be legitimate and real and recognize your humanity. So there's that. Um, yeah, we've had some good conversations so far, even though I just launched about a week ago. And so I'm very hopeful with how things are going to go forward. And yeah, so anyway, I do have a Facebook page that's associated with this. You can send a message with like questions, topics, or whatever you'd like to hear a discussion about. There's also a dedicated email address that you can find in the description. Well, I guess you can find the Facebook page in the description, and you can also find the email address in the description. The goal with that is so that people can submit topics anonymously and we can have a discussion about them um, without you having to be confronted, so to speak. And so, as people do that, my hope is to kind of schedule when we would be doing that with whoever is submitting those topics so that they can be here for the discussion or at least be able to find it within the context of the forum. So, anyway, uh, I'm obviously here. I'm going to be finding the puzzle game of the day. Um, Usually, I have a jigsaw puzzle running, um, but it takes me a hot minute to find one that feels good. But I have been thinking about potentially doing a nonogram just because I find those interesting as well, and they count as puzzles. So, anyway, here's Timber. She's back. Timber. Timber kitty cat. She's looking at me in this way like she's got something that she needs and I don't know what it is. Anybody at Jackson Galaxy out there? Come here, sweet. Most of the time I think she's just really cold. And so I try to give her a little bit of warmth. You chilly? Yeah. Just like every conference call that I've had over the course of time that I have worked at home during COVID, She has to make her presence known. She doesn't like when your attention is focused on something else. She likes to interrupt video games and conference calls and uh, dinner. Like, if you sit on the couch, she will definitely find her way to your stomach. Or at least she finds her way to mine. But I like it, so I try not to give her too much crap. I'm just trying to fix things up. Well, somebody just knocked my phone onto the floor, and I am super glad that that didn't happen to be the time that it would break. Because that would suck. I would really hate it if I broke one of, like, if I broke my phone live on YouTube. Um, there's a lot of things that would suck about that, but. So I guess, what could I talk about today? Um, I know I labeled it as TMI. Like I said at the beginning, like, we're really talking about things that, like, the majority of our social structure, our society would say, like, you shouldn't talk about that. Like, that's not something that you would bring up in public or ask a stranger or even talk about with your friends. I think that happens a lot, and I think it's really unfortunate. We kind of socialize out of the need to connect with each other because sometimes that connection and the vulnerability that is required to make that connection happen can be uncomfortable for people, and that discomfort gives them a way to legitimize not not participating in the conversation or legitimize the judgment of other people who are willing to be vulnerable and are willing to share their details in order to get help. So, I guess I'm about to share some details because I'm not too shy about it. And I think that the more we give examples of what we think people should feel comfortable with, the more likely it is that we'll get a return in that conversation in such a way that will be beneficial to our social structure. So, even though we had Medical Monday didn't really go anywhere. But I think today you'll probably learn a little bit about me. So, the issues that I've kind of referred to a little bit vaguely over time, like over the last week, I've made a couple of references to the fact that I live every day with a couple of issues that are considered chronic or what have you. And uh, today happened to be a day in which I had to do checkups for two of those scenarios. So, one of those scenarios has to do with my mental health. Um, like, the history of my mental health is a little bit uh, sketchy. Uh, the vast majority of my life, I've kind of struggled with finding a good balance, mostly because I did not understand how to fit in with the world around me and struggled, like, as much as I'm a writer and people say I have a really great way with words when it comes to that, I felt like I could never make myself truly understood. Like, I always felt disconnected from whatever it was that everybody else seemed to be able to tap into. So, when I got to like the end of high school, I had been fighting a lot more with my family. Um, and that kind of generated this sense of doom and depression. And I got into this mental health state that made it so that, like, even though I had gotten some scholarships to college and all of that stuff, I just wanted to leave. And I finally got to see a therapist, and this is me cutting out a whole chunk of things. I got to see a therapist at the time who recommended that even though I was compelled to not go to college because I wanted to just get out, um, that I should, because he thought it would be really good for who I am as a person. So I went to college under his recommendation, and what I found was that the experience was kind of like discovering that this person that I had been kind of convinced over the course of my life thus far was unlovable, undesirable, was broken, and whatever other adjective you want to put in there. These things I was convinced of, but then I got into school and realized that it was likely the community I was trying to fit myself into and not necessarily the person that I am. Because they found people who would love me for who I was. And it completely changed my life, changed my perspective. And while I was still dealing with a massively out of control eating disorder at the time, um, I felt like I had started to find my place. And that's where I kind of started to become like this outspoken, don't give a shit kind of person. So, I went through that and graduated and really got defiant and, to the point where I was almost causing fights and stuff. Well, not almost. I did cause fights with my family because the time there was a lot of desire to kind of be passive about issues um and I just wasn't in that mind space anymore. So when my parents threatened to kick me out of the house, I told them that I would leave uh, almost immediately. And they were kind of like, "You'll never pull it off." I did. I left. I never went back, and I never moved back into their house. Um, but in the first couple of years that I was outside of their house, I actually started dating somebody who ultimately ended up dying in a very tragic way. And of all the things in my life that have heavily impacted me, that moment of learning about that guy's death was one of the most significant events. It was a breaking point that I sometimes don't understand how I survived that moment. Um, it was the kind of situation where, it was completely unexpected. And I found out because his death was newsworthy. They announced his death on the evening news, and that's how I found out that my boyfriend was dead. And that it still gets me sometimes. But, I mean, it's been a little over 10 years now since that happened. And that in itself is crazy for me to think about because now I'm older than he was when he died. But it took me many, many years to get to a place where I could I could handle thinking about it. So, um, I, I just now I'm kind of like off or whatever. But anyway, so when that happened, I actually had like an acute like depression break where uh, it inspired this complete downfall where like I gained a ton of weight because I was really abusive to myself through food. Um, I felt like I had lost one of the few things in my life that was so validating. It was it was truly devastating for me. And I eventually had to ask for help from my doctor because I couldn't even close my eyes without like having visions of how this guy died. So that's how like I got my first real diagnosis of any sort. And at the time it was just grief inspired depression. And so with my history of education within psychology and such, like I have a very strong opinion about the fact that if you're going to be taking medication that you should also be in therapy. So when I started taking medication at that time, I started therapy and I still see the same therapist to this day. Um, but over time, that diagnosis has changed. So one of the things that I've found really difficult and a huge struggle in my life is combating the definition of who I am after an incorrect diagnosis has been applied. Because what ended up happening to me was this huge bunch of stuff that that snowballed. And at a certain point, I was really heavily medicated for mental health issues because we were treating uh, the side effects from one medication with another medication and just kind of layering and layering and layering. And as we built up those medications, my diagnosis got more significant. And I went from having grief-stricken depression and, innate anxiety issue to some pretty serious diagnoses, some of which would ultimately be like a guaranteed disability claim. But I knew that if this was truly the case, if this was really what was wrong with me, like there was no way I would have survived 25 years of my life without ever needing medication. So it didn't make any sense to me. And it ended up turning out to be like something completely different. And since then, I've also had genetic testing uh, that ultimately confirmed that the majority of the medications I've been given are ones that I don't, like from a genetic perspective, I wouldn't be able to properly metabolize or utilize. So ultimately, my, I don't know, my pathology or whatever was actually caused by the medication and not necessarily was the medication treating. So today I had to check in with the psychiatrist that I currently, well, that I guess today was the last visit I had with him. It took me, 10 years of the guess and check method of different medications, particularly to manage anxiety, before I got somebody who was willing to really sit down and take it super seriously from a medication perspective. I had a lot of doctors just kind of throw, oh, did that work well enough? No, okay, we'll throw more on it. And I'm sitting there reading like NIH studies that are talking about how as time goes by and they establish more knowledge about the origins of depression, that they've, at least on some levels, found indication that depression can be caused by a lack of serotonin or an excessive amount of serotonin. And like that made so much sense to me when I read the study because it's the same way with vitamins. Like if you have a vitamin deficiency, a lot of the symptoms of a vitamin deficiency can be the same as a vitamin overload. So, um, the fact that our bodies exhibit these symptoms in the symptoms are the same regardless of what type of extreme we're facing is fascinating to me, but it's also very difficult to navigate and treat from a medical perspective because, at the end of the day, if the predominant opinion is that depression is caused by a lack of serotonin, but you happen to be the kind of person whose depression or experience of depression is caused by an excess of serotonin, your doctor is literally making your condition worse by putting you on an SNRI or SSRI. And that's literally what happened to me. So I went through a whole hell of a lot of stuff and ended up removing every medication, but now I'm taking a single medication in order to help manage the severity of my anxiety, which is actually fairly significant. And I'm pretty happy with it. So I got to tell him today that I felt from like a therapeutics perspective that it was actually really at least helping me in regards to the anxiety control. Because I'll tell you what, all this COVID stuff and the stuff with POTUS, like, it's really difficult when you already have kind of a doomsday tendency in your anxiety to be looking at somebody like Trump and be like, oh no, we'll be fine. Like, for the last 4 years, I've been sitting here thinking that, uh, he's gonna nuke us off the face of the planet because somebody didn't like his hair or something, like just, I can't wait until the guy kind of, I don't know, I'm trying to like toe the line, like, because I don't really feel like having like Secret Service knock on my door for me randomly saying something, but I'm kind of looking forward to the day where he does not have the capacity to communicate with us anymore. So, anyway, so I've been kind of in constant anxiety mode for several years now, and at the end of last year, I actually got to a point where it was so bad that I was having dissociation events nearly every day. And that was the first time in my life that that had happened to me. So that was weird in itself. So it was really nice to be able to like tell this guy that things were getting a little bit easier. The other checkup I had today was my annual check-in for the fact that I've had a gastric bypass. And while like the mental health thing went pretty well, the gastric bypass part did not. I really don't like talking to the bariatric team. I don't like talking to people who have had bariatric surgery in general. Like other patients, I find it really frustrating. I find it difficult to relate. I find it difficult um, to feel like I'm being taken seriously. And even like today, I wanted to have a legitimate conversation with them about some concerns that I had. And I was not able to really finish any sentence. There was a lot of interjections to justify why, you know, why things were the way that they were or why my approach was wrong. And I just find it so frustrating because I'm the person living in my body, right? I'm the person who can communicate whether or not what's going on right now seems to be working effectively for me, or whether the directions you've given me are working effectively for me. And when you've had a gastric bypass and your stomach is tiny and you're trying to work around it, um, it's kind of important, I think, to really allow the person who's had the surgery, like to actually say, like, this is what's going on and this is how it feels. And I just wasn't allowed to do that. And, I, like, there was one goal that I had from the visit, and that was to get a referral for me to have a specialized kind of physical therapy. And when, like, she argued with me about it and basically said that she wouldn't sign off on me working with a specialized physical therapist until I had like a full-on colonoscopy and uh, gastrointestinal workup. And while I'm not necessarily like, no, I can't possibly do that, where I'm at in my life right now, as some of you who are watching this already know, I'm like, I just lost my job. I lost my job 3 weeks ago. My insurance is gone at the end of November. It's COVID. I live in Nebraska District 2. We're in the middle of a humongous spike of COVID cases. There's no way that I'm about to be able to secure a procedural appointment by the end of November. So, trying to make it hinge on this contingency, like, I can't give you referral for a non invasive type of treatment that you can legitimately prove that you could probably very much benefit from until you have this aggressive testing done. Like, at the end of the day, that's one of the major reasons why I hate our health system. I hate our health system because it's expensive, and, because there is ultimately inconsistency of care. But like one of my biggest pet peeves right now is like I have a complex situation going on, and some of the things that I'm experiencing could be 100% like medication side effects. But who do you go to talk to them about medication side effects? Do you go to the person who prescribed the medication, or do you go to the person who's in charge of the body system that is having a problem? I've been around the block for a bunch of different things. And they say, well, go to your primary care. Well, primary care sends you to the specialist. So I've done things like I had to go to a neurologist in order to get checked for brain tumors because I reported constant dizziness. And at the end of the day, it was just like it was stones in my ear. But I had to go through all of this specific and complicated testing in order to rule out that. And prior to ruling it out, like I couldn't get any help. Like I couldn't get any antiemetic medication. I mean, nowadays at least um, you can get meclizine over the counter. So you know it's better than nothing. But I feel like if we had a better system in place, like we had kind of like a medical coordinator kind of system where you can say, okay, well, I would like to engage this person to be the person who's the hinge point in the middle, uh, it would work a lot better. And I feel like if we switched to a system in which like everybody was kind of working off of the same notes and the same organization pattern, which I imagine eventually what happened with socialized medicine, then like I don't have to sit there and try to remember all of the notes, and I don't have to worry about authorizing like one clinic to get notes from another clinic, and I don't have to deal with things like today where she's trying to push me to have a colonoscopy, and I'm sitting there going, but I've literally had this problem since before I had the gastric bypass, and it's just gotten worse. And we're pretty sure it's getting worse because I've had like 5 different surgeries to my belly, and the muscles are just getting too super weak. I just want to work on it. But in order to work on it, like, I have to prove that something more serious isn't happening. And I feel like I could just do them in conjunction with each other. Like, I don't understand why I have to do one and then the other. Like, why can't I do them at the same time? Like, what hurt is it gonna do for me to do specialized physical therapy as I'm working, like, as I'm waiting to go have a colonoscopy? Can't possibly be a bad idea. Could guarantee you if I, like, she ultimately suggested that I have my gastric bypass reversed. It was the first time somebody on her team actually mentioned me doing that. And she mentioned me doing that because I was expressing the frustration and, you know, the unhappiness of, dealing with the physical fallout. Like, I don't feel like I got what I was hoping to get from it, but I have a lot of things that have happened that were not the most positive. So she brings up reversing my gastric bypass. And there's a part of me that's really tempted, but then at the same time, I'm like, I really don't need another belly surgery. Like, that just sounds like a recipe for disaster, a recipe for weakness. I'd rather figure out how to work with the circumstances that I've got right now so I wouldn't feel like shit all the time. And I also wish that they would take me super seriously with what I'm trying to tell them because, you know, what doctors will tell you when you're a woman and you're going in for gastric bypass and you're premenopause and all of this stuff is that losing weight will improve your chronic pain. It'll improve like any precursors to things like diabetes, but then it'll also improve like your fertility and stuff. And then you get somebody like me where I ended up losing my ability to have kids. I didn't ever really get all the way to, goal weight. My pain control got way worse and I had to increase my treatment. It was really depressing for me. It was really difficult for me to incorporate that into like my personal view of self because, like, for real, when you walk in there and you're thinking like you're going to feel so much better when this is over and it's worth the risk and everything, and then you find out just by doing it that, none of the things that they supposedly, guaranteed with the process or whatever, none of those things are happening. None of those things are going to happen. It sucks. She likes the little scritches like on her forehead essentially. I feel like she probably has headaches all the time. I feel bad. I really hope that I can figure out like my financial situation in such a way that like it enables me to actually be able to take her for her annual checkup because she's due, and I want to make sure she's okay. She Grandma Kitty. She's my old Grandma Kitty. I think it's interesting too, like this completely unrelated to what I was just talking about, but I get excited because it'll say that I have a new comment. And I'll be like, oh, somebody's like commented, that's great. And then you're like, oh, wait, it's just another spam bot. Doesn't doesn't do you a whole lot of good. I forgot to share out my time. So I'm going through sharing my posts, trying to get people to come hang out, 'cause it would be really nice. Maybe I'll just sing a bunch of random songs while she makes biscuits on my thighs. Biscuit maker, you're my baker. Grandma cat in my lap. Oh, I told you yesterday I was gonna do some terrible beatboxing. At least I stopped before it got too bad. I'm just trying to make sure you don't fall through. Okay. Oh, yeah. Like, let's not unplug the microphone. I really like it because she'll like sit there and she'll like look and move her head in just the right way. She's like, I still want you to touch my head. I worry about her. I worry about her in this way that's like, it's kind of weird, kind of interesting. I don't know. Because like, I think like she doesn't seem to be eating as much as she used to. But like, if I bring out like her favorite treat, like she'll just trounce through it. Like you should eat treats, won't you? You just don't want your kibbles no more. And she'll eat the kibble if like she gets hungry enough, but it's like she's just, I don't know. I'm hoping that she's just fed up with it, and I've been trying to like, my job loss happened in such like a unfortunate time frame because I was trying to transition her to a really high quality food, and we were doing really well, but I really haven't had like, I've had, the cash flow. So like, I don't want to use the rest of the bag up already. I still want to be able to transition her. I need to get more where, we're getting to a point where it's going to become a problem. And I want her to have the good and fancy food, but um, at least right now it's hard to justify because it's expensive. My partner is currently humping the wall in a really awkward way that, we've we've been tolerating each other for quite some time now, and we're kind of, we're huge like dorks, but can be so super boring too. But yeah, such is life. Let's set up a puzzle with a rainbow. I see people kind of checking in and then popping out, and I'm super hoping for somebody kind of stick in with us and join the conversation. Um, because otherwise, I'm just broadcasting my own details. That if you really wanted to know about my life with a gastric bypass, you would be following my other channel. My other channel has like, I think like 18 followers or something like that. So, I mean, I know I talked about it last week. Like, so, like, what am I trying to get at? What am I trying to get at? So, okay. So, if we're gonna continue this whole like TMI thing, or, like the details you never asked for but you're getting today, um, I have attempted to, do the vlogging, blogging thing um, for quite a while. Like my first blog was back, um, like even at the end of high school. I think I was basically doing blogging before it was really a thing, right? So then when they came out with LiveJournal, I was all on it. So, you know, back before Facebook existed, um, myself and my friends utilized LiveJournal in order to share with each other and to, have a more personal relationship. And I remember like just thinking how kind of fantastic it was because it enabled me the opportunity to share things like the writing that I was doing at the time without like having to awkwardly walk up to like friends and being like, will you read this and tell me what you think?" Which I never did. I never it just wasn't my style. It's still not my style. Like I don't ask for people to read my stuff and tell me nice things. And I think that is one of the reasons why, over the course of time, one of the things that I've done with people is help them by critiquing and developing their poetry. But I got into a place during during that era of LiveJournal before Facebook. I made a good number of friends who asked me to do things like critique their poetry. And I have a couple of those friends still to this day. Um, but more often than not, what I would run into is like there's one person in particular, maybe like he's not significant enough in my life to have like his own nickname, but I guess that would depend on how often he ended up coming in conversation. But anyway, he was this guy that I started like that I ran into randomly in a chat room or whatever, and he got to reading my writing, and then he asked me uh, for some attention. Like he asked me to critique his poetry, and I remember it being like a really strong life lesson. And that life lesson ultimately was that I would not read the work of my friends. And that's pretty blanket statement. So I guess to kind of explain or whatever, it's not that I won't read what people I know write. It's that like I put a huge caveat, like a huge disclaimer on the front of it. Like if you're asking me to look at your writing, to look at your poetry, or to look at, like I work as a professional editor. If you want me um, to look at your novel and give you feedback and, story editing and critique in that realm, you legitimately have to want that information from me. If you're looking for somebody who'll be like, "Wow, you're so good," like you just don't get that from me because I feel like that's not like there's no point in that. Like that's not constructive criticism. That doesn't help you grow at all. What's up, Mateo? I'm just sitting here rambling. Yup. You know, I'll tell you what. I found this shirt randomly at a Target. There was not a single other one of them in the Target, and it just so happened to be in my size, and I was pretty excited. So see you like walked in during my random discussion of critiquing people's poetry, which I got to like so randomly. That's one of the things I find kind of fun about this. I'm like people are just gonna think I'm totally crazy or whatever, but the I don't know, the free association of it to see like where my brain goes with things has been kind of fun. I am the cuddle monster though. Got the cat in my lap. How you been? What's the good news? Any good news? Boy, sometimes I look at like storytelling, huh? Who you telling stories to? Oh, we're starting to get to the point where there's people on different servers that it gets a little disjointed. I don't know. So, I guess jumping back into my poetry story as we wait for a potential answer to the who is Mateo telling stories to today. Um, so the dude who asked me to critique his poetry, he was a weird person to have in my life. Like, I tend to have this experience over and over, and I don't really understand it. But I'll talk about the actual experience in a second. But um, ultimately, like I mean, like the more of the details of the experience. But anyway, um, they, I'm like trying to psych these people out because they're messing with two pieces that go together. Anyway, so he started following me and then he told me that he thought I was super cute and then he found out that I was tall and that made him really excited because he was a particularly tall guy and so he got to a point where he was trying to be impressive to me but he also recognized the fact that I lived halfway across the country and frankly uh, I made no bones about it. Like I did not think he was attractive at all. Like it just was not something that I would ever go for. Um, so he said, he understood or whatever, but he also tried to be impressive. And so one day he asked me for help on his poetry because he knew that was like what I was into and stuff. So anyway, um, he gives me this poem, and it's awful. It's awful, and it's supposed to be like this love poem that he's gonna give to his current girlfriend, and I'm trying to help him like develop something more significant. The reason why I think it's awful is I've got a couple of things that make a poem by default awful. One of those things is rhyming couplets. Now, I'm not saying that any poem that rhymes is a piece of shit, but I think that people default to this like state where if they're trying to write poetry, it has to rhyme or be bouncy in that way. And um, I'm I guess I prefer things to be a little bit more artistic and less predictable. So he was using, um, he was using a lot of rhyming, but then he was also doing things like using the same words over and over and the same rhymes over and over. And at least one time he rhymed a word with itself. Like he used the word heart and he rhymed it with heart. And I was like, are you serious? Like, and so at that point I said, do you want me to be honest or do you want me to be nice? Because if I'm honest with you, like, and I'm trying to like help you get better, you're not gonna like it. And he said he wanted me to be honest, so I was. And I realized, like, over the course of time, one of the things that people have said to me about, in a number of different situations is that there's a nuance to this idea of what it means to be honest. Like, part of why I had difficulties and ended up uh, losing my job essentially was because they would say, we want you to be honest with us about, what you need or your feedback or whatever. But they really didn't. And when I was trying to like talk about that, you know, like how do I mitigate that feeling or that situation with my therapist, like literally the default response I received was that I should know that within a professional context, they never mean honest. Like, even if they say, be honest with me like we're friends, which is what they would say, they don't really want me to be honest with like in that friendly way. And even if they think they want to, they're certainly not expecting the kind of honesty that I tend to bring to the table. So I have to build some kind of filter. And like that situation with my friend and his poem was one of those situations where, like, if I was a different type of person and I had a different way of looking at the world, I likely would have registered the fact that, like, the kind of honesty I need to bring to the table for this person is maybe not the harshness that I took to the table with him. But one of the reasons why I didn't filter it is because I was frankly tired of his infatuation and was hoping that if like I basically revealed part of my bitch to him, that it would take that feeling for him down a notch. Um, he ended up being pretty upset about the poetry comments, but it didn't make any dent in his expressed feelings for me. So that was fun. But so, like I made kind of a passing reference to like the situation and the kind of like I get into the situation a lot. So you'll have to tell me, Mateo, if this guy really is like somebody that you know, because the situation I'm talking about is like I'm a cisgendered woman. I'm queer, but like I I predominantly date men, and uh I guess like whatever, right? Well, I'm also pretty non-traditional in a variety of ways, whether that be like I'm over 6 foot, and uh so that in itself tends to be oddly fascinating for people sometimes. Um, but I clearly don't have like the heavy makeup and the my hair done all special, and I'm not trying to like show my boobs on camera or any of that kind of stuff. I don't really have that vibe to me. So what ends up happening is like other women think like by default like I would not possibly be a threat because they look at me and they don't think that um any dude would really find me particularly compelling. Sometimes those people will think that I deserve pity. Like, I've had more than one situation where another woman looks at me and assumes that I don't get attention. So she does something stupid, like tells her boyfriend to hang out with me so that I can get at least a little bit of attention from a man. And I'm like, I certainly didn't ask for it, and I certainly don't need your charity. Uh, so I'm like, whatever, right? So then what ends up happening is I make friends with the dude because I get along with dudes better, just whatever. Then suddenly I become a threat. And the threat makes it so that even when I have like a legitimate and healthy, platonic, long-standing friendship with the dude, I end up getting I end up having the decision put on the plate for them where they're told they have to choose between the woman that originally invited them and encouraged them to hang out with me. They have to choose between her or me because they decided that they ended up liking me too much. We became too good of friends. But the guy with the poem literally told his girlfriend he was in love with me. And then he was upset that she wanted him to not be friends with me anymore. And I was like, I wouldn't want you to be friends with somebody that you openly told me you were in love with either. Like, you're lucky she didn't just walk out the door. Like, what? Like, I get that people, even within monogamous relationships and stuff, can get random crushes, but like, do you tell your partner this? You tell your partner this when it's not like a celebrity. Like, it's one thing for you to say, for me to admit that I think Jeff Goldblum is hot. Like, that's a joke between my partner and myself. But at the end of the day, like, I'm not gonna like it. It's I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't know. Right. Exactly. Like, what the hell? I don't understand. Like, I just didn't understand that at all. But I also don't understand people who uh, allow for those kinds of ultimatums because I feel like the fact that you got that ultimatum in the first place tells you just how much trust is in your relationship, just how they envision your relationship actually going and how healthy it is. And the fact that it has happened to me multiple times in my life is super concerning. It's even happened to me in circumstances where, like, I was kind of dating, like, one example is like I was kind of dating a dude who was married but was, you know, pursuing a divorce. And so we were talking and stuff, and then his I mean now she's an ex-wife, but at the time she was still his wife, and she brought up a very like financially driven fact to him, like, if we split up you won't have this insurance or whatever anymore. And he goes, "Oh yeah, damn." So then he was like, "Well, maybe I shouldn't leave." And she didn't know that he was like seeing me in any capacity other than we were just friends. So when she put that kind of thought on the table where he was going to miss out on this financial benefit, she also said, if we're going to stay together, you can't stay friends with Lynn. And I'd been friends with this guy for like 11 years, and he walked out on our friendship for medical insurance. So I don't know if that's a bigger testament for like how shitty relationships are these days, or how shitty the medical system in the United States is these days, where a person would sacrifice a decades long friendship for medical insurance. Oh, you're so sleepy. I feel bad because I have to go to the restroom and she's in my lap. Mateo, I feel like you would be a good person for like free associations storytelling. So I don't know if you were around or you saw this kind of snippet. I talked about this the other day, where I used to go on a particular platform that was geared more towards making, making new friends, aka people trying to hook up. Um, so it was like a mixture between people who were actually trying to make friends and people who were trying to get some side action or whatever. But I used to go into it because I also like I have a bunch of random like pages that I run, and one of them is called Fail Cupid, and it was literally just me documenting all of the terrible um, pickup lines and stuff I got while I was trying to do dating online before my partner and I got together. And then after COVID hit, I ended up just being so bored at one point that I decided to kick it back up and just kind of put out there that like I'm looking for friends, but I went on to the same app in which I got just ample ample amounts of material from. But anyway, that particular app had the same kind of ability. Like you could go live and people could come watch you and they could tip you. And so there were people who did like adult themed things, but I went on there as Lynn the storyteller, and people would come on and either ask me direct questions and I would tell them like an anecdote from my life, or I'd try to make up a story. So I miss that though. Like I randomly got kicked off of the platform, and so now I can't, like I had to make the decision, do I start over and try again, or do I just kind of give it up? And I decided to give up that platform because it kind of sucked. Like I was, as much as, the random dick pic is, you know, I guess funny, um, sometimes it damages my opinion of humanity to see just how many dudes say hello with their genitals. What the crap? I don't know why they didn't just put it in its spot. Let's see what this notification was for. Oh, YouTube. Another, this one thing that is, uh I don't know, subscribe to the damage report. When a damage report posts stuff all day long, I get random notifications in the middle of the night. I only swing free on Mondays. It's good to know. So if I see you on Monday, I should be careful. Make sure I don't open any emails that you might send me. Only on Mondays. Let's see here. I can say that there are other men in this world. Certainly don't wait for Monday to say hi with their proof of manliness, we'll put it that way. There are some times where I kind of miss the absurdity of like trying to find somebody to date. Like I'm generally happy with where I'm at right now, but every once in a while you kind of get this thought like I wonder how absurd it is right now. I especially wonder about it with like the whole COVID situation. Like I feel extremely grateful that I don't have to try and fish around in what has to be a sea of dick pics right now. Um, but I don't know. Maybe it like has become like the new era of correspondence where like you end up getting to know each other well enough where then you start exchanging actual handwritten letters and it's like all nice and shit. But I highly doubt it. Like I highly doubt it. Maybe. Maybe that's how I roll, man. I like in that sense, like I am definitely my dad's daughter because I guess a good chunk of my family kind of acts like life is a musical. My brother and I used to talk about that a lot where we wished that just like in a Disney movie or whatever where oh, we're walking to school, and then all of a sudden people are like, math is hard, but I love English, or whatever. And um, just kind of trying to, like, it just seemed like that would make life a lot more fun and exuberant. Now I'm sitting here thinking about, like, are any of the stories that I have from back in the day when I was dealing with online weirdos worth talking about? I mean, I had some like, you know, I guess probably have more than one encounter with like a fedora over the course of time, but I think one of the things that I got quite a bit was, just like I was saying, like there's a lot of women who look at me and evaluate me as being like somebody to take pity on. It's a little bit better now than it used to be, but like uh I guess to give like a good frame of reference, like I used to be significantly more overweight than I am now. So unlike other people on the internet, unlike my dating profile, I put a full head to toe picture of me when I was at my highest weight. I didn't like try to I'm not gonna lie, like I know my angles for my face, and so like I would certainly try to look cute in my pictures, like my profile picture or whatever, but like I never hid the fact that I was fat, and I never hid the fact that um like that I knew that I wasn't everybody's cup of tea, because it's definitely a hard sell to to be like, hey, I'm over 6 foot, and at my highest weight I was 535 pounds. So it's like, okay, well, I'm over 6 foot, and I'm also very heavy. And even though I didn't look like a beach ball, I still had like a figure and stuff. It was still like, you can't hide it. And so like I didn't hide it. And like one of the funniest, like there was a couple of things that happened because of that that were super funny. There was the camp of dudes who just like thought I was lying about how tall I was. So I got like to the point where I made a point to like put pictures of me standing in front of a doorway, or like one of the pictures that I took was like a picture of me under like a clearance sign where like the clearance was 6'4", and is like a picture of me standing under the 6'4", and like there's only like this much space, and I'm like hee hee, but I was like, well, how do you prove to somebody on the internet that you're not lying, right? Um, like the very first guy that I ever met through online dating, I told him I'm 6'1", right? He tells me he's 6 foot, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm used to being taller than pretty much everybody that I know, so I thought, well, I can deal with 6 foot. That's okay. He shows up to meet me, and he's like 5'9", and I'm a nice enough person where I was like, okay, well, I'll still hang out with you, but like, I just looked at him and I go, did you think I wasn't gonna fucking notice? Like, you're you're nearly half a foot shorter than you told me that you were. Like, how would I not notice that? And he goes, yeah, I thought you were lying. And I said, I guarantee you that there is no woman who is lying to tell you that she is over 6 foot. If she tells you that she is over 6 foot, she is telling you that legitimately. So that was my first experience with that. But anyway, what I was actually like touching on was uh over the course of time where, I'm big and tall, and I'd have women who were taking pity on me even though I never asked for it. I'd have dudes who talked to me like that too. Like I got the line like big girls need love too so often. And I was like, well, yeah, like I recognize that big girls need love too, but I'm not desperate. Like I would rather be alone than be with somebody who just like took me to bed with pity. Like I don't know. Like I've it's been a weird mix of like people that I've been exposed to over the course of my life when it comes to that kind of stuff, because I'd either have the people who thought that I deserved pity and, that they could take one for the team or whatever you want to say, and then the people who just thought that I was phenomenal and amazing, and, you know, both kind of didn't seem to fit. I don't think you go in there, but you have to. Hmm, there it goes. Okay, I'm sorry to wake you up, kitty cat, but I have to go potty. Oh, she's so sleepy. I shall be right back. I'm going to go AFK so I can, as I call it, go squeeze the lemons. But I will be back. It'd probably be helpful if I would unmute myself before I started talking after returning. That's what I'm saying because I was like, are you still here? I guess I'm just talking to myself again. Yeah, I'm talking to myself if I don't turn the mic back on. Dur, dur, dur. Ah, got a little. I should have cleared the glasses before coming back here, but whatever. So here's your ability to ask me anything. What are you gonna ask? I I highly doubt it. But well, like think about it like this. Like you could ask questions, you know, uh, as in like you could ask questions that you need answers to, or you could be like, I feel like hearing a story about this, or you can ask, like, since we're still in the beginning stages of this and, you know, people kind of getting to hear about me, if you had questions about, like, who it is that you're actually listening to, like, you could ask questions about that, or whatever. Or I'll just ask you a bunch of questions and then we can have an awkward me asking questions and you typing answers kind of thing. I don't know, are you trying to say right now that like I already have somebody with a crush on me? So what's going on? Having awkward. Okay, let's see. See, like what's going to be super awkward about it is this is like the part of like getting to know people that I'm terrible at. And that is uh spontaneous questions. Like like I've I've never really been a huge fan of, you know, interview style getting to know somebody. Like I don't like it. I don't like situations in which you have to fill out a survey where, you know, like when you start a job and they say, "Oh, we have everybody fill out this survey," and the survey has things like, "What's your birthday? What's your favorite color? Do you have a favorite band?" You know, and you're like, all of these things are legitimate questions and pieces of information that you eventually want to figure out. But I'm like, I just find them so much more interesting to figure out, like, through the course of talking to somebody than just a question and answer session. So I have a tendency of asking, uh, well, you know, and just like the funny thing is that like if we're talking about just general surveys, like I fill out surveys for like there's a program with like the Google Play Store, for example, where you can do surveys about like where you go every day. Like it connects with your Google Maps And uh, ultimately, it's so loud. Uh, when it connects to your Google Maps, and then like if you're signed up for it, it'll trigger questions based on like where you've been or whatever. A lot of the questions that I get are about like grocery stores that I go to while I'm doing delivery. And what's nice about it is like you fill out the surveys, they're very quick, but then they pay you like credit for the Google Play Store so you can so that you can use it as part of like the games. No, that's not the cat. Okay. Well, like I cleaned the thing, like I was waiting to do that. Like you're about to I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, a little bit. I am in the living room, so it's kind of my space. Thought about like kind of depending on how often people kind of chip in and hang out with me and stuff, like I might I might migrate back to where I had put up like a I built like a home office while I was still working from home, and I had it in our walk-in closet, and that was kind of my way of making sure I had a little bit more isolation. I haven't decided if I want to do that or not, though. Like, my apologies for the awkwardness, though. It was certainly not my intention. Now I'm all like super awkward. Like, ultimately, that was, that was my partner deciding to change the trash bag. Yep, that's that's kind of my feels about it. Kind of like timing can be interesting. We'll put it that way. Let's see here. Think maybe. Hopefully, my Steam updating isn't going to make everything all funky or something. We'll close that down. Do 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 do. Boom. I don't need that. Don't need that. Almost clicked on my own live stream. Trying to look at my Steam library. I know what I'm looking for. Like I'm looking for a different type of puzzle game to just chill with. I have a game on my Steam that's like a connect the dots game. Like that would be that'd be quite the thing to be like, oh, people are popping by and they just see me doing connect the dots. So interesting. Oh, that's not it. Oh, come on, where are you? I'm gonna play the kind of like one of the types of puzzle games that I enjoy quite a bit. Just have to get the new game up. Let's see here. We turn that off. What? I know it looks like a little kid game, but it is the kind of game that like I dig it. I like it. I gotta get more stars in the mermaid. So, yeah. So I can be pretty awkward. I recognize the fact that I can be pretty awkward. Um, in general, I like being awkward though. Like I have like a fairly loving relationship with my awkwardness, and I think that it's because it seems to help people relax. Kind of like I know one of my previous streams I talked about how from a professional perspective, I valued being the person that people felt they could come to, like they could come to me with questions and it didn't matter, like they didn't have to worry about feeling stupid when asking them. Um, it's kind of in that same realm. Like if my awkwardness can help someone feel more comfortable, like I'm all for it. I'm happy to be, an avenue for them to feel more comfortable with themselves. One of the many purposes and points of this channel in general. Oh, I just screwed this up. I'll probably lose. Told ya. 'Cause I screwed up again. Ugh, I just like push my glasses like way up on my face. Well, thank you very much. It's always good to see faces come back. So, thank you for stopping by again. And I'll go look at your meme. We'll see. We'll go see what it is. Kitty cat. She's a kitty cat. Kitty cat. Starfish. Okie dokie. I'm still kind of getting used to like. What the? That was the cat. I think she just is wanting attention. So I'm getting to a point where I'm like, I might retire the stream just because she seems to want so much attention that it's like she wants to get a cuddle. And I am the cuddle monster and all, so, kind of got to break it down for the kids. I'm currently trying to navigate um, the way that Facebook has like laid out things a little bit. So I know you said that you sent me something, but I'm like, where did you send it? Like, is it in a message? I don't know. Good night. We'll see you next time. Thank you again for coming to hang out. It's always good to see people. Night, night. I just got your tail hair in my mouth. Guess that's what I get, huh? Finally. Thanks. Now I see it. That's a good one. Good old outdated Dick Cheney joke. That was entirely too long. Took me entirely too long to find it. Another day. Another learning experience. My eyes are watering. She just looked at me like I offended her. Probably did. Oh, good days. It's been an okay day. Once I got past the difficulties of talking about medical stuff with people who don't listen. I'm like trying to get more stars on this one, and I'm not going to get them because I just screwed up again. Mm, 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 mm. Ask Mama Lynn anything. Do you got questions? I got answers. Or at least a bunch of information you didn't want to know till you knew. And life is so much better when you're not alone and someone's there with you. Gonna make up some legitimately terrible theme song. Oh my gosh, I clicked like one box over from where I needed to click, and that's terrible. And I destroyed my entire attempt. It's weird because the mouse has a certain sensitivity level that, like, I can click the mouse and it'll be overly sensitive, but the drag not as overly sensitive. But I um, haven't quite figured out all the buttons. streaming tool was giving me an error message, and I was trying to um, figure out what it was trying to tell me because the way that my spacing is set up, I couldn't see it, and ultimately it was not worth the effort. So there's your exciting update, Ether, where you get to find out why I was looking off to the side and not talking. God dang it! I just figured out how to turn off an accidental click thing. I was excited, and then I screwed it up anyway. Try again. I think we'll just get rid of at least the easy one. So I don't know. I might be getting a little bit too sleepy for me to continue. Gonna get close to being a good time to say goodnight. I feel like we had a pretty decent time tonight. A lot of me talking into the ether, but I feel like when I go back and I'm trying to find smaller snippets, that some of the stories that I told today will be worth capturing in smaller segments. I could be wrong. I don't know. But, ultimately today was about, sharing stories and information. Oh, well, I was gonna log out because nobody was really around after Mateo left. But if you want to hang out for a little bit, like we can hang out. Unless you already left. I mean, it's really up to you. I've just been kind of telling random stories and, giving the internet details about, you know, things like my medical situation, like that nobody really cared to know about. But, um, but yeah. So how are you doing today, Song? sorry to hear that it could be better. I know that phrasing. It's code for it was a shitty day. What's the project about? This game is called Riddles of the Owl Kingdom, or Owl's Kingdom. It is one of the very many options that are out there for nonogram games. Nonograms are, it's one of my favorites. My day could have probably been better, but my day was not the best, but it was probably my fault that it was not the best. I, I mean, I guess side note or whatever, I really, like, I understand the reasoning behind doing medical visits by telehealth, but I'm not the biggest fan of it. Well, what I was talking about earlier was, I had a couple of like checkups today done via Zoom because of what's going on around here. Like they are very much, very much limiting people going into the clinics. And one of those appointments was with uh, with the bariatric team that I worked with, which is, uh, just so you don't have to scroll back in the video too much. Like I've had a gastric bypass done, and I'm far enough out in the process now that basically you just have like an annual check-in to make sure that everything's generally going okay, and um, to get your blood work checked and that kind of stuff. And so I tend to have difficulties in those conversations because I do a lot better if um I do a lot better if I'm familiar with the person and I see the same person over and over, and we kind of get to a point where they understand how I work, and how, because I'm the kind of patient that I educate myself about my conditions, and I research the things that I'm experiencing. I research my medications. I will come to the doctor's appointments with suggestions as to what I think the next course of treatment is, or what have you. And I was in that appointment today, and they're asking me how I think things are going, and I unexpectedly got pretty emotional about it, like where I openly stated that I was dealing with some frustration in regards to the situation because they tell you a lot of stuff when you are fat. And so like my doctors told me that my chronic pain would be better if I wasn't fat anymore. Um, they told me that, I'd have a better chance of having kids and all of this stuff, right? Well, I was losing weight by myself, but it was going really slowly, and I kept getting sick from side effects of losing weight, which they don't ever talk to people about, that there's like actual side effects that can happen from losing weight. And so we decided to do the weight loss surgery to try and make it like one last uh, wave of sickness in that same way. And what I got out of it was I've not reached the weight that I'm supposed to be. My pain got worse and I lost my ability to have kids. So it's been kind of striking me a little bit more significantly recently because then you start questioning like, well, what was the point? Like, what's good about this? The only thing that like I didn't do it because I was having trouble keeping myself from eating too much. Like I needed additional assistance in um, like malabsorption of calories or whatever, I guess. And it was like a last ditch resort. It wasn't, nothing else is working kind of thing for me. But anyway, I just kind of had one of those moments where like I admitted to this disappointment and it did not flesh out in a positive way, and it ended up in tears, and I ended up actually rage quitting the Zoom, and I'm over it, I guess. Well, I mean, I'm not sitting here sharing it here for, sympathy or anything. I appreciate that, but um, I knew it was a possibility that those things would happen. But I think when we talk about, you know, was it worth doing, and we look at it retrospectively, I'm not one to really regret things because I feel like you learn stuff no matter what, and who you are is a result of your experiences, even if the experiences have been shitty ones. But, sometimes it can be difficult to say, I seriously impacted my life in this way, and I'm certain that it was worth making that impact because, I often just feel trapped in my body, and then the few times, like, I'm feeling trapped in my body and I just want to have, I want to eat a pint of ice cream. I just want to have an ice cream moment, and I can't. Like, I'm not usually like, I never really was like eat my feelings kind of person, but I still liked the occasional chubby hubby moment, and I can't really do that now. Well, I will say that even though I am far from perfect when it comes to reminding myself of that mentality, that having a general perspective about the things that I've been through in that vein has helped me in a fair number of ways. Because I've, I was saying to, I forget who I was talking to the other day, but, oh, I was talking to my adoptive grandpa. Um, we were talking about just like the experience of life or whatever, and he was saying that I'm just like a baby because he's 96 years old, and so uh, I was, I was born when he was. That's not what I was doing. What the crap? Start that over. Um, I had to tell him like that I've had some experiences that a lot of people don't ever have, and those people who do have the experiences that I've had are usually older than I am. So I do wonder sometimes what it's going to be like for me to be elderly, because if I've gone through some of those things already, like what do I get to do when I'm an old lady? And I'll tell you, back in the day, I used to think that meant that I wasn't going to get to be an old lady. But now I just think that I'm going to have a really convoluted life story and no grandchildren to tell it to. So maybe that's why I get into doing stuff like this, where it's like, well, maybe I'm not going to have a whole lot to show for myself, but maybe I can have like a couple of people who give a shit enough to think that I have a legacy. Was I confusing? Yep. I think sometimes what happens for like me and my brain is I get into this argument with myself because the person that I am, I just want to be myself. Like I don't want to have to question what I'm doing, what I say, how I talk, um, how I dress, what I choose to do with my hair or not do with my hair, etc., etc., etc. I want to be able to continue the freedom of that expression, but I also want that to be welcome. within the community of people because they still want to have friends and stuff. So it's like, you have this constant debate of like, what do you do with that? Do I continue with this person that I feel like I am and just hope that other people will eventually decide that it's worth investigating and being a part of that? Or do I pay enough attention to say this is how my person will fit within the context of what other people need? Or or what? Like, and at the end of the day, like if you go with option number one, you have to accept the fact that there might never be a spot for who you are within the community that you're currently in. I have definitely thought about the fact that like where I'm living right now might not be the place for the person that I am to fit, and have thought about like just leaving and moving and trying to start again. And then I get into this thought process of, am I just afraid of what it would mean to be lonely for a significant portion of my life? Or would I truly be a better fit and happier in a different place? I wish that I could kind of game out the scenarios, you know what I mean? Where you could say, okay, well, if I took exactly who I am and I put myself in Portland, Oregon, what would that look like? I'd like to think that it would be a better fit. I mean, it's supposedly a better fit politically and a better fit with some of the like art stuff that I like to get into and whatnot. But my self perception could be completely wrong, and I might not ever, like, I might not be a good fit for the places that I think I would be a good fit. Like, my role might literally be being one of the more liberal people in Nebraska. I don't know. So you just have to sit there and question whether or not this is the gamble that you're going to take today. I will say that in general, my default ends up being that I'm just myself, and I just assume that, uh, I assume a certain kind of social, uh, I don't know, social interpretation. I don't know how to put it. I've seen a certain pattern in my life where there are people who think that I'm interesting or challenging, or I help them think about things differently or whatever. I used to say that I was like a train station where people stop and uh, conduct business or something at the train stop, but they continue on. Like they get back on the train and they keep going, whereas I'm the train station, so I stay put. So I watch people come and go from my life all the time, and it's constantly hurtful. But the people who come and go from me remember me as the train stop, and a lot of times will like communicate that stopping here changed something monumental about who they are or their life. And so I try to like I'm trying to make sure that I embrace the fact that people will find me life changing, more like highlighting that as a value and significantly important above, you know, things like wishing I went on more dates or something. I think it's a little bit easier now that I'm older, but the first time I really thought about that concept of like being the train station, of being the mechanism of change for people, was back when I was in college. And I remember it being something significantly hurtful for me to have like this realization. Like I really appreciated the fact that like I would have like a significance to people, but the problem with it is that if everybody else just keeps moving on, then it's like you don't ever have people for you. And that can be really difficult, because then like when I ran into things like the year that changed my life was 2013. And when I hit 2013 and I was dealing with everything that I had going on there, like I literally didn't have anybody. Like I didn't have, a collection of friends that were coming to the hospital to see me or any of that kind of stuff. Like I had to contemplate my mortality and fight for my life without any hands to hold. And I remember being really resentful of that for a long time. Like, I didn't understand why it seemed like other people didn't even have to ask for their, friends and family to, and in some circumstances, literally drop everything and come stay with them. Like, like essentially move in for a couple of weeks from out of state just to make sure that they were okay. And, I was sitting there going, like, I don't know if I can take care of myself, and having to think about moving into like a rehab facility, like a physical rehab facility, in order to make sure that, I was safe. It does make me wonder how many people in this world are in that same circumstance. Yeah, see, like that kind of stuff can be really hurtful because, like, you're sitting there, like, you're looking at life and you have this group of friends, and even though you can, like, recognize that this group of people, or, like, this chunk of people, you know, they they were perhaps more gravitating towards this friend of yours. But like that's okay, because people, not everybody's going to like you best, but like you'd like to think that if you spent all this time together that you'd at least be able to maintain some semblance of a friendship. But when stuff like that happens, it's like you can't help but recognize the fact that it likely means that the friend of yours that moved away was the only reason why you got to hang out with everybody. And that sucks. I hope it changed for the better. Like if I think about it, like back in 8th grade was probably about the time that I got to a point in that period of my life where I I recognized that most of the people I went to school with and stuff thought it was just a game to make fun of me or whatever. So, um, at like a couple years prior to that, like it used to bother me quite a bit. And then like I got to a certain point, seventh, eighth grade, where I was kind of like, well, they can, you know, go screw themselves. Uh, and I started kind of getting more into like what I liked and what I wanted to focus on, like the things that I wanted to do. Well, I mean like in the sense that you say your social life changed, like I was saying like I hope that it got a little bit better, but I do so I think that there's two general different kinds of people when it comes to social lives. There's people who maintain the delusion of, care that you see in those types of friendships where like everybody hangs out together, and as you get older and you get to like drinking age and stuff, people go out to the bars all the time with each other. They, they'll party, they'll have football game or they'll tailgate, they'll do whatever, right? But when you really ask them what's going on with their lives, like they never ever talk about anything of substance. And so you have the people who are perfectly happy to live that life. And I've never been that person. So for me, I'm always like in the deep end. Like I don't like small talk. Like I would rather meet strangers and have them tell me what's really going on in their life today than for them to do small talk uh icebreaker bullshit with me. And while I think that that makes for quality connections and good conversations and stuff, what it also does is um, leads you to connect with fewer people because most people want to stay in that shallow. Well, if I'm honest with you, that's the truth. Like the same thing happens with your job. Like as you get older and you start, taking jobs in the professional world and stuff, like uh you start to like you'll socialize with your coworkers out of kind of necessity. They may not be the kind of people you would actually hang out with ever, but because they happen to be the same people who were hired to do a job alongside you, it's like a method of survival where you say, okay, because I have to spend 8 hours a day with you and I don't want it to suck, I'm going to be friendly with you. But then at the end of the day, everyone goes their separate ways. And if you leave the job, it's kind of like when your friend moved away, where she moved away and, like it's like the part that connected you to the other people, aka the job. Once the job is gone, the reason to socialize dissipates. What you doing, kitty cat? Huh? Well, I think it's good to have vulnerability in general, and I think connections are good too. I think it's also really good to be selective of who you truly let into your bubble. Like I might be sitting here like sharing stories and stuff, but like there's a certain line that I'm not going to be crossing in like a wide open public forum, right? And that line exists within like my personal relationships as well. I mean, maybe, but I also think it's important to recognize that it's okay to not be a particularly outgoing person. Like you don't have to be, life of the party, jumping all over the place kind of person in order to make those connections. Um, I know you weren't. I don't think you were here for it the other day when I was talking about this, but um, talking about making the decision as to where you truly want to fit. And I think that what ends up happening a lot for people is we experience anxieties and depression and stuff like that, not because there's something wrong with our brains or even something wrong with like how we perceive ourselves, but rather it's a result of us saying, okay, I am person A, and the world prefers people who fall into column B. And we generate all of this, vibe of dissatisfaction and anxiety and frustration because we're person A trying to fit into person B's space. And so, like, in certain levels, like, you can train yourself to be a different kind of person, but there are parts of us that are just innate. They're just how we are. And we ultimately make the decision as to what normal is to us and what success is to us and what it is that we want to see happen in the world of our life, right? So once you kind of give yourself permission to fall outside those uh, general definitions and boundaries, there's a certain like relief that happens. And it took me a long time to make that recognition happen in my own life. Like, I have spent so much of my life trying to say, okay, even though I know I don't fit this general role that people look for in, a traditional woman or in the workplace or whatever, I'm going to continue trying to push myself into these roles that really all they do is make me feel really uncomfortable and unhappy. And it really was just in the last couple of weeks that I said, how can I sit here and talk about how I just want to be myself and I want to embrace who I am and all of this stuff if at the end of the day I'm still trying to maneuver my way into spaces where I know I won't fit? So I'm trying to give myself the permission to simply be myself and be myself where it makes sense to be myself. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I had my good long think on it and ultimately felt better about it in the long run. There's probably a more eloquent way for me to say what I was trying to say, but I mean, even like when you say like you're procrastinating on your thing because you're stuck or whatever, I'm like, you say that, but I'm kind of in the camp of I would bet money that you're not truly stuck. I would bet money that you either, in general, think the project is stupid or that, like, the idea or what you have to do in order to accomplish your piece of it is so easy that, like, it doesn't compel you to work on it right now. So you're filling this space with other things, other more interesting things. But when it comes down to it and you have to make sure that you turn over the materials, you'll get it done because that's how procrastination works. I mean that's how those of us who have, you know, who gravitate towards procrastination work anyway. I used to give myself a really hard time about the fact that I didn't. Well, if it's stupid, then it probably isn't inherently good, but it's hard to have confidence in a project that you don't think has quality or merit to it in the first place. So if you're actively writing material, but it's material based specifically on a prompt, and so you're kind of like it's not original, it's just regurgitating or whatever it is that you're doing. The question isn't necessarily do you have, you know, high quality artistic writing. The question is ultimately did I answer the question that's on the table? And I would argue that if you um, coherently and adequately answered that question, then it's going to be just as good as anything that you felt particularly good about. You know, I mean, I got my degree in literature and I read like one of the books that was assigned to me during the entire time that I did the degree. And what it taught me was that there is true value in the development of bullshitting. You know, I mean, and I fully recognize that at the end of the day, my philosophy on this could be completely wrong, but one of the highest rated papers that I ever wrote for a college course was like something like 15 pages long, and I wrote it in the 12 hours leading up to when it was due, and it was my midterm, and I hadn't read the book, and I mean, I procrastinated like a pro, and I still managed to pass. I still managed to get an A. So, I mean, yeah, I guess I don't know what students are like these days, but when I was in school, sometimes you would get like 100% of the points or hit the top of the curve simply for following directions. Because you'd have people, they'd assign a, 12 to 15 page paper, a comparative analysis of, these short stories, and a person turns in 2 pages of incomplete sentences and then doesn't understand why they got an F. So, I'll tell you, when I wrote that paper that fast, it was one of those times where I was like, I didn't realize that I could type that fast. Because I could take typing tests and like I only rate at a certain point, but it's because I'm all, uh, like I can't help but like slow down to try and be accurate. But when I needed to get the paper cranked out, and I just sat down and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, like I did a pretty good job. I think that the moral of this whole discussion, or the moral of my point, or whatever you want to say, is that you shouldn't overthink the quality of your writing, especially for something like a group project. Now, if you were working on like a master's in fine arts and your uh, thesis was your novel, that might be a little bit different. But if like your job is to, write the summary of the data that you use to make your conclusions for, a marketing campaign or something, like you will be fine. And I generally believe that people who are procrastinating, like actively procrastinating, and will literally name the fact that they're procrastinating, like you literally came in here and said, I'm procrastinating right now. So, like, you're making an active choice to put it off. So, I feel like if you really felt that you were in jeopardy, or like you weren't going to be able to pull off an adequate end result in order to meet the expectations of your project, you certainly wouldn't be here, or you would be here asking me questions about your subject matter to see if I can help you. But you're not really doing either of those things. And right now, I'm doing one of those things where I'm like, I keep drinking water because I feel thirsty, but I also have to go to the bathroom. What, the procrastination thing? Uh, well, I feel like if you Google searched why do people procrastinate, there are a lot of resources that would say things along the lines of people procrastinate because they have a fear of success, or you know things like that. And I think that on, I guess, certain levels, like depending on the subject matter, or like the event at hand, or I don't know how to put it, but like uh like for example, I had a professional accreditation that I was supposed to take care of. I ended up getting it taken care of, but I procrastinated on it really a long time. And one of the reasons why that occurred, and I could like openly admit to the fact that this was the reason why, was that I worry, like for whatever reason, I don't know where this comes from, but I worried that when I submitted it that I would fail. And I wasn't ready to receive a failing grade. So I was afraid of the failure, but I was also obviously not very confident in my ability to be successful. Well, I think that's reasonable to want to hold up your end of the deal. I certainly I certainly had many a group project where I could tell you that I did most of, so here's the thing is when I did group projects, I both procrastinated and often did most of the work. And I would often do most of the work because other people would put it off and put it off and put it off and put it off until we got to a point where it's due tomorrow and we don't have, the presentation finalized or whatever. So let me put it like this. I think it's perfectly okay for you to procrastinate. Just don't procrastinate on a level that will ultimately make your group mates worry that you're not going to show up on the last day with what you need to have taken care of. You know what I mean? Like, don't let on that you don't that you're not doing anything yet. Cuz like that's when it kind of gets shitty, because that's when you're removing that confidence from other people and making making it difficult for everybody. But I think if you can keep your procrastination silent and you have that sense of I want to do a good job because I don't want anybody to fail, um, then you'll be perfectly fine. What you doing, kitty cat? You want to say hi? I had her at a weird balance. Now she'll be grumpy with me for like 30 seconds, and then she'll be like, "Oh, but you're so toasty. I'm gonna lay on you again." aren't you? She's feeling a little bit adventurous today. She's elderly for a cat, but it's interesting to watch her because we adopted her from this dude who was not much of a cat person. Like she was his cat's wife, his wife's cat. um, yeah, no problem. Like I hope it at least helped kind of put your brain in a good space. I think you'll be all right. I'm probably going to take that note as my sign that it's okay for me to log out for the night myself, and I'm going to go chill. So it was good to see you, Song. I'll see you next time. And yeah, so I guess I'll do like my awkward spiel for anybody who watches the video and didn't catch the beginning, but catches the end. And to Song, yes, I hope you have a good one too. And you know, I'll probably be around tomorrow, so if you hit, similar roadblocks in your brain, you can come talk to me. Um, so yeah, so anybody who's been watching the video or has any questions, concerns, whatever, um, your subscription and your follows would be much appreciated. There is a Facebook page. You can follow me there, send me messages. There's also a dedicated email address with the capacity of accepting your questions, concerns, or topics of discussion. And my goal is if you send anything in, that I will schedule the discussion for a time where we know you can be there. Regardless, uh, anytime the chat is open, it is kind of free forum, and I try to discuss with whoever shows up whenever they show up. Um, just try and bring a little bit of levity to this world. But everyone is welcome until they are not welcome, and I certainly hope that we'll see the community continue to grow. I appreciate all of the people who have already shown their support, and I look forward to continuing the conversation tomorrow. Thank you very much. Have a good night.